This is why Rich Torrenzano and I, Rich will be speaking next, argued in the Wall Street Journal last November that CEOs will need to start thinking like political party county chairmen in dealing with their shareholders, with a new level of attention to intensive and highly sophisticated communication directed at shareholders. Now, shortly after our article ran, I received an email from a retired high official in the SEC. I want to read you at length, a bit at length, it wasn't that long, what this high official told me, responding to what Rich and I had said about the need for greater communication brought on by access to proxy rules and the like. This official said, "What particularly attracted my attention in your piece is your admonition that companies must learn to converse with shareholders through their website and email, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and a host of emerging media. You pointed out that the greater danger will be for those who stay out of the conversation." This former high official continued, "Until very recently, conducting that kind of conversation with shareholders, particularly if it touched on the election of directors, would have run the risk of violating proxy rules." In fact, we encountered some of that criticism after the piece ran. It turns out it's wrong. I'll continue. And we knew it was wrong. Continuing from this former high official. "Not surprisingly, lawyers advise companies not to attempt it because being part of the conversation wasn't worth the risk. In the last 5 years, the agency adopted rules to authorize a company's creation of an electronic shareholder forum, which has changed that calculus and opened up significant and as yet untapped, largely untapped, opportunities for better corporate investor communications." This official continued, "The electronic shareholder forum specifically permits corporate shareholder discussion, even if it is about director elections, without violating proxy rules. Within this e-forum, both company and its shareholders can say what they will, subject to libel laws, without having to file proxy materials with the SEC and otherwise worry about proxy rules." Finally, as this official wrote, "Moreover, the company can design the website, if it chooses, to do so in a way that restricts participation to actual investors. This will not eliminate completely the end of privacy problem you highlighted, but it will go far to eliminating online graffiti." Now, so this is where we stand right now in access to the boardroom and voting areas. The street rule is gone. I'm afraid the back alley rule is rising. How does this all add up? Taken together, the regulatory atmosphere in Washington emphasizes today regulatory discretion over fixed rules. The FTC expansion is an example of that. It emphasizes launching actions on the basis of accusations and suspicions, not on clear evidence, basically emphasizing accusations and suspicions as a way of heading off developing issues. This is the attitude behind the Treasury reforms. It's the attitude behind the Twombly repeal. It emphasizes downgrading the claims of property, as we see in net neutrality. It distrusts markets and market players, and it upgrades activists and other non-market players, as we see in the EPA actions and access to proxy. If I were putting it in more general terms, it emphasizes benevolent, arbitrary government versus the restrictions of rule of law. These are questions of emphasis, not absolutes, but this is the mindset that we see in Washington today. And when you have that mindset, you have, and I'm returning now to what I said at the beginning, you have a particular emphasis and a particular need for sophisticated strategic communication on the corporate and even political levels. Otherwise, you are very, very vulnerable and cannot, as corporate officers, uphold your fiduciary responsibilities to your shareholders. Those are my remarks.
I think it's fascinating that you said that the regulatory agencies feel that under both former President Bush and President Clinton, that corporations got a free ride. Why do they think that? Is there anything to that? What was going on? Is it that corporations got a free ride, or did they feel that they couldn't do anything? What are you describing?
Well, I think that what you're seeing, particularly at the political level, some at the career level, but particularly at the political levels, in the agencies, we've seen it. The talk about there having been no oversight in one agency after another. And if you look at agency after agency and the political rhetoric around it, it's we are now taking charge after a long period of no charge. Now they'll, at the political level, they'll talk about President Bush, but the fact is many of the same disposition attitudes you saw in the Clinton years, not as pronounced as in the Bush years, but still much more crediting of the companies than you see now in the Obama years.
Okay. Any questions from the floor? How do you define hope? Hope for what?
Look, you know, this is the environment we're in. Hope and change, right? This is the environment we're in. And I would just emphasize what I said at the beginning and at the end, that this environment requires a much more careful attention, a much deeper attention, and much more sophisticated attention to communication on the corporate level, as opposed to product level or financial level, but on the corporate level, both to the public at large, key elements of the public, and towards the political world. And there's no way around that. We are in that kind of environment now. If I were speaking politically and in a political audience, I'd say, you know, there are lots of things you can do over the next several years, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the responsibilities of companies, of boards of directors and managements to operate in the environment they find themselves. And they find themselves, as has been said over and over again today, in a very deeply difficult environment. I happen to disagree with Ben on the sources of the current crisis, but I do agree with him on the results of the current crisis in terms of political support for companies and the way in which corporate America is perceived. And what I've drawn out for you are the political ramifications of those perceptions, and they're not good. We do need, companies do need to be careful about their internal governance, but I think what we heard from Emily is that most companies are extremely careful. It doesn't save them from being caught up in this storm. What they must do is be attentive to their communications policies.